And up next, CityNet 30 takes you downtown for the weekly luncheon meeting of the City Club of Portland. Live weekly coverage of City Club is produced through the facilities of Portland Cable Access. Now we join the City Club for this week's program.
I'm Paddy Tillett, President-elect of the City Club. Welcome to what's clearly a very popular City Club program today. We're going to focus on the latest addition to Portland's media scene with the launch of the Portland Tribune. Our guest today is Dr. Robert Pamplin Jr., founder of this new journalistic venture. But first, as usual, some announcements. As you know, our membership drive's underway until the end of March, and so far we have 64 new members, just over halfway to our goal, so we need to step up the effort. Thanks to members who have introduced new members this week, to Tom Dunn for recruiting Michael Campbell, to D.G. Chakraporni for introducing Sotya Nari Anon, and Margaret Eichmann for introducing Candace Horta. Welcome to all of you. Join us on Friday, March the 23rd for a special legislative update from the Oregon Senate. The program will feature Senate President Jean Durfler, Senate Majority Leader David Nelson, Senate Minority Leader Kate Brown, and Senate Democratic Assistant Susan Castillo. That'll be here at the MAC. A reminder that you can access past club programs, presentations, research reports, and upcoming events and membership information at www.pdxcityclub.org. We'll be kicking off our second Portland seminar series on March the 20th, so if you're interested, register today while there's still room. You can find details in the bulletin. I'd also draw your attention to a new spring series called Uniquely Portland, featuring landmark Portland businesses. It'll begin on Thursday, April the 26th. This series features visits to and presentations from the owners of Rejuvenation House Parts, Urban Wine Works, Powell's Books, and Clear Creek Distillery. All events begin at 5:30 and end at 7 o'clock. Registration's limited to City Club members only and will be limited to 50. So anyone interested should complete the form in this week's bulletin right away, or else contact Suzanne Jeffries at the club for more information. I also want to call your attention to the announcement in this week's bulletin of the Donald Sterling Memorial Fund, which has been established for the City Club at the Oregon Community Foundation. This remarkable tribute to friend, brother-in-law, City Club past president and statesman was established by club member Ned Hayes. The $100,000 fund will produce an annual gift in support of the club's Friday programs in perpetuity. Initially, this will be in the amount of about $5,000 a year. We're indebted to Ned for this gift and to Don for all that he gave to the club and the community. When asked about the gift, Ned stated that he hoped it would serve as an incentive for other members to follow with similar gifts. What an extraordinary example you've set for us all, Ned. We're all enormously grateful to you. Thank you very much. Before we move into today's special program, I want to introduce a member of the Peace Corps of whom you've heard recently. We have these occasional bulletins from the Ukraine. He spotted our City Club website earlier this year and began communicating with staff about setting up a City Club modeled after this one in the Ukraine. So here he is today to tell us a little bit about his efforts. So I'll turn the podium over to Wade Fickler. Wade.
Dobry den. Pleased to be here today and to have the opportunity to speak with you. As has already been said, my name is Wade Fickler, and I'm a Peace Corps volunteer serving in the former Soviet Republic of Ukraine. I live in central Ukraine in a city of about 400,000 people. The name of the city is Vinnytsia. Although I'm a business development volunteer, my primary focus has been developing organizational management practices for a human rights center known as Podilsky Center of Human Rights. This year, Podilsky Center is celebrating its 5th year of service to the greater region of Padilla. Before I sold my car and packed everything I owned into storage, I enjoyed a wonderful life in what I think is one of the greatest cities on the planet. And of course, I'm talking about Portland, Oregon. During the 10 years I lived in Portland, I admired the work of City Club, but admittedly, it was from a distance. I attended the occasional Friday forum, and I relied on the accuracy and the objectivity of the information published by City Club, but I never did join the organization. Ironically, now that I live in the former Soviet Union, I'm far more aware of the value of civic organizations such as City Club. Citizen apathy in a weak NGO or nonprofit sector and a near total absence of citizen initiative typifies society in Ukraine today. And from my very American perspective, these are the obstacles that are hindering Ukraine's transition to a fully independent, democratic nation with a flourishing free market economy. Several months ago, while pondering the meaning of life, or more specifically, my role as a Peace Corps volunteer in Ukraine, I turned to the City Club website for inspiration. When I read City Club's mission statement, I knew immediately how I'd spend my 2nd and final year in Ukraine. To inform its members and the community in public matters and to arouse in them a realization of the obligations of citizenship. This, of course, is City Club's mission statement. And I'm happy to say that on February 15th of this year, it was also adopted by the organizing committee for City Club of Vinnytsia. When I return to Ukraine, this will be the focus of my work. The Podilsky Center of Human Rights is a regional resource center for developing non-governmental organizations, and they have fully embraced the concept. To date, they've held 2 organizational meetings to develop the structure of the organization and have applied to World Bank for financial assistance. Our greatest challenge will be changing the psyche of Ukrainians that has been so badly damaged by Soviet life and now by the corrupt system that rules their nation. So our first challenge and our greatest challenge will be to educate people about the privileges and the responsibilities, and most importantly, the possibilities of civic involvement. I'll just give you a short example, and then I'll turn over to the mic to today's speaker. Last summer, I took a group of high school students to their city hall, and it sounded like such a simple task to me, but the idea was met with great resistance. Surprisingly, not by City Hall, but by the students themselves, who thought they had no right to visit City Hall. None of them had ever considered the possibility that they could walk into their government building and that they could ask to speak to any of their city leaders. How sad this seemed to me that the generation that should be poised to lead Ukraine out of its social and political quagmire has a very limited outlook on life. Equally as disappointing was the deputy mayor's response to my inquiry into ways that these children, or these young adults, could participate in civic activities. His response was, "I don't know. I've never been asked this question." So, as you can see, we have a lot of work to do to involve the citizens of Vinnytsia. But currently we have about 12 people that are working diligently on the development of this organization. My goal in the next year is to have City Club registered as a legal and independent NGO and ready to take baby steps into the community by the time I leave. At that time, I will lobby Peace Corps to place a new Peace Corps volunteer there to maintain the cultural bridge that exists between the United States and Vinnytsia. I'd like to thank Nancy Hedin today for not only for the invitation to speak, but also for opening her door to other types of support, such as guidance and information sharing. If anybody else here would be interested in having more information on the program, would like to learn more about Peace Corps, or would somehow like to support our activities, I will leave my contact information with the City Club staff. So, zaraz. Zі місто клуб Вінниці до місто клуб Portland. Дякую і щасливо. From City Club of Vinnytsia to City Club of Portland, thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Wade. That's the sort of initiative we hope the City Club does breed in those who pay us a visit every so often. Our board host today is Les Swanson, first vice president of the club, an attorney in private practice, and he will ask the first question of the speaker. Following Les's question, we open the program to questions from the City Club members in the audience. Please make your way to the microphone while Les is talking so that we can make the most of our question time. Please identify yourself as a member of the City Club and ask your question clearly and concisely, or you get the question card, or the broadcast of City Club programs this quarter is made possible in part by corporate underwriting from Kaiser Permanente Health System, Wells Fargo Bank, and Portland General Electric. We're very grateful for their support. Now it's my particular pleasure to introduce to you our speaker today, Dr. Robert B. Pamplin, Jr. He's a businessman, a philanthropist, a farmer, a minister, and an author of 13 books. 2 of them have been on the Book of the Month Club list. He's earned 8 degrees, including 2 doctorates, degrees in business, economics, accounting, education, and theology. He's also a graduate of our own Lincoln High School, I might add. He's CEO of R.B. Pamplin Corporation, a family-owned company with annual sales in excess of $800 million. Dr. Pamplin has served on presidential and state commissions and as chairman of the board of trustees of 3 colleges. He's been awarded many honorary degrees and awards, including the Distinguished Leadership Medal from the Freedom Foundation at Valley Forge, the National Caring Award for being Outstanding Entrepreneur of the Year, and was selected as America's Outstanding Individual Philanthropist by the National Society of Fundraising Executives. And last but by no means least, in 1999, he was named Portland's first citizen. Welcome, Dr. Pamplin.
At this very moment, Lucy of Peanuts fame is talking to Charlie Brown. And she says, you know, Charlie, life is just like a giant cruise ship. You grab your deck chair and you can go in the stern of the boat and you can see where you've been. Or you can take it to the bow of the ship and you can see where you're going. Now, Charlie, where do you take your deck chair? Charlie says, gee, Lucy, I don't know. I've never been able to get my deck chair open. Well, let me tell you, when I engaged in this bold adventure of the Portland Tribune, the community newspapers, and the radio stations, and the internet, and it seems to go on and on and on, I didn't know there were so many ways to communicate. I was thinking that not only I couldn't get my deck chair open, I didn't know whether I was even going to be able to find my deck chair. But with the help of everyone, not just those individuals that supported the cause, but everyone that's been so instrumental and excited about this new venture, I've been able to find my deck chair, and gradually I'm opening it up and feeling the beautiful wind is hitting me as I sit in the bow of the ship. Any success is built upon the greatness of her people. And there was a painting that was hanging in the Oval Office of the White House. Now, this painting was quite unusual. It was titled The Signing of the Declaration of Independence. Only a third of it was finished. 2/3 of it was raw canvas. The reason for that, the artist died before his commission was completed. Now, President Eisenhower, when he was then the President of the United States, found it in the basement of the White House. He retrieved it and brought it up and hung it on the wall. He did this because he believed that that particular painting had a providential message. And that message was that we can all fill the spots on that raw canvas and fulfill the ideals of the signers of that wonderful document. This is a story that I told to the people of the Portland Tribune when we were just beginning. And the point of my story was that percolation of thoughts, exchange of ideas, agreeing and disagreeing, just plain communicating with one another is so vital to the harmony and the health of any society. That's what really makes societies click, is when you have divergent views, divergent means of communicating, and you have the opportunity for everyone to exchange these ideas honestly, fairly, with the intent of doing something right. We can all be a part of that canvas then. We can all place ourselves in spots on that canvas and preserve these ideals. And I believe if we do that, we will enhance the strength and the profession of journalism and the strength and harmony and health and vitality of our community. Because if we do it right, we're going to offer balance, we're going to be accurate, we're going to be fair, we're going to be non-sensational. We're going to give the facts, we're going to let the readers make up their own minds of where they stand. To me, that's journalism. So that's what I told everybody. I said, folks, I'm the owner. I'm not the editor. I'm not the publisher. You're going to do all the work. But I'm going to tell you this. There's only one thing that I'm interested in, just one thing, besides breaking even. I said, I'm doing this as a principle. Principle only goes so far. I don't mind not making any money, but I don't want to lose any money. So we want to break even. Yes, yes, yes. But most important, we want to fulfill this principle. And the principle is to be fair, to be accurate, to be balanced, non-sensational, and to give an opportunity for all different sides of issues and let everyone make up their own mind. So, we have two goals. First is that we want to be the best in local, regional news gathering and reporting. Now, this means that we must always be on the cutting edge, developing original stories. We must be in-depth, truthful, objective, fair, and balanced. We report the facts. We are not the shroud of sensationalism. Our news is real life, real people, real events, not the movies. Secondly, we want to be adaptable to everyone's availability for news. Now, we're all busy people, and we believe we're busy people. Therefore, we are busy people. And so we need to make sure that we deliver our news within a framework that fits everybody's schedule. So our format is to provide instant news over our news talk radio station KPAM and the integrated website, which will integrate both the radio and the newspapers, more reflective news and softer news that embraces the community, the suburbs where you live and where you have your families and where you enjoy knowing what's going on as you live your life. And those are the suburban newspapers, 19 community newspapers that surround Portland. Bring you that. And then we also want the Portland Tribune, which is downtown, covering the city of Portland. And thank you very much for all those people who live in the suburbs and say, you know, we come downtown once in a while, but we cannot live without the Portland Tribune. So we give you that too out there. And this is geared more for reflective and serious news. So my inspiration was to give everyone news wherever they are in a format that they can get it at any time. We can give you the instant news, and we can give you the reflective news, and we can give you the soft and fuzzy news. We can make you feel wonderful and informed every minute of the day. In the year 467, just a few years before the cataclysmic fall of Rome, there was a writer in Rome called Sidonius. Now, this gentleman was very significant and important, not only among those that were in power, but he was important to himself. And Rome is going to be around for 500 years, half a millennium. But then, in just a few years, it was going to come unglued. Now, Sidonius didn't see it coming. All of a sudden, it happened. Why was that? Well, they believed that it was because he was so close to the center of power that he didn't notice what was going on around him. Now, how was he so close to the center of power? He was just talking to one group of people, those people that were in power. He was only associating with one idea, the Roman idea of those that were in power. And so that is called the Sidonia syndrome, that we reach a point where we're so close to just one side of things, we don't see everything that surrounds us. The profession of journalism is one of our best safeguards to prevent stale thoughts and complacent minds. And that was Sidonia's. Stale thoughts, complacent minds, one side. There was I'm sure you're familiar with the famous attorney, Clarence Darrow. Well, he was a criminal attorney, by the way. On his 80th birthday, he was confiding in an equally aged friend about how his memory was beginning to fail him. And he said, you know, I can't even remember the first girl I ever kissed. And his friend said, why, I can do that. And Darrow said, gee, how I envy you. The last time I remember, it was my wife. And if I could only remember the girlfriend, the romance of all my life would have been so much greater. Now, here's a gentleman that only remembered a part of his life, that part that was most dear to him, but he lost all the romance and adventure all of his life. And what's so important about newspapers and all that we have to provide you with is that not only can we give you what is important today, but you have a record of recorded history to go back and see the romance and adventure of all your life, and that has involved you. Well, this is a thumbnail sketch of all of the reasons that we chose to embark on this great adventure, the great adventure of principle, I call it. And it's a projecting vision, and now, so that's sort of where we are with that phase of what I wanted to talk to you about. So I'm going to flip now to the next assignment that was given to me, and that was to spend a few minutes talking about newspapers in general within the United States. So imagine this to begin with. If newspapers were new, they would generate the same excitement of .coms, internet, and websites. Why? Wow, that's quite an statement. Why would that be true? Well, you don't have to tie up to a telephone line with a modem. That's one thing. Number two, newspapers have the ability to amass amounts of information in one place that is greater than any other medium, plus a system for presenting that information in a package that is quite believable. Invariably, newspapers employ more people to gather, and they edit, they sort the news more than any other local or news-gathering enterprise. Newspapers continue to be the best information as a bargain of information anywhere. Newspapers are adding to more information that we have available, and their product is available in sections, different types of sections. You know, you have the living section, have the business, and so forth, so they're divided up for you. They are better information, better graphics, even supplemental news, and you have it also on the websites. Now, you combine all of these capabilities, and so you have the wonderful combination of an old medium, which is paper, and a new medium, which is the computer. As Sid Gruesome, who's a New York Times writer, wrote, "What carries 30 million bytes of storable information, weighs less than 3 pounds, provides hard copy, handles both text and graphics, allows random access, is available 24 hours a day, is completely portable, and costs less than 30 cents a connected hour." And his answer was the newspaper. Now, if you analyze that, that's a pretty good value for 30 cents. And the way I look at it is this. There's a little statement that I found I think kind of capsulizes it all. You have to kiss a lot of frogs to find a prince. But remember, one prince can pay for a heck of a lot of frogs. So no matter what the technology that is thrown at newspapers, I really believe that newspapers are going to survive, and if they survive, they're going to be a prince. Now let me take you for just a minute down the road of history. Many of you probably know some of this, but bear with me because I think it's quite interesting. First newspaper was printed in the colonies in 1690. And the first weekly appeared in Boston in 1704. Ben Franklin started his newspaper, the Philadelphia Gazette, in 1729. And in 1796, President George Washington did deliver his farewell address in front of an audience. Yes, that's where he appeared. It appeared on the front page of the American Daily Advertiser. And this nation's oldest continuous published newspaper is the Hartford Courant. And it appeared in 1764, and it promised under its banner these words, and I think this is very, very salient. In these pages, the greatest genius of all ages lives and speaks for the benefit of future generations. And I think that capsulizes it perfect. On these pages, all the genius of all the ages lives and speaks for the benefit of future generations. There was a great British parliamentarian lawyer by the name of F.E. Smith. Now, this guy was so smart that he just really needled the judges. They got so furious with reading all of his briefs because they were so brilliant and there wasn't much that they could do about it. But finally, one judge was bold enough to say to him, "Mr. Smith, I've read your case, and I'm no wiser than when I started." Of which Mr. Smith said, "Possibly not, my lord. You may not be wiser, but you're certainly better informed." So hopefully newspapers will not only make you better informed, but with the information will make you wiser. It's really the content that I think is the important ingredient. The daily recording of our history and the presentation to the people of the facts on which they can meaningfully participate in this democracy. In 1844, there was a new technology that came online. Anybody here can tell me what that was? 1844. Very good. Telegraph. Samuel F.B. Morse had the world's first telegraph, zinging across the country. And the big thing was, at the beginning, he was going to relay the results of the Whig Party convention in Baltimore to an audience in Washington, D.C. Now, James Gordon Bennett, the publisher of the New York Herald, said, "Oh my goodness, great threat. The newspaper," he said, "is in imminent demise. It's going to submit to destiny and it's going to go out of existence." Well, it not only survived, but it used the telegraph to its own benefit. And as a result, it became stronger and better. Well, then came radio. Same thing. Then came television. Same thing. And now the internet. Each time newspapers are going to go out. But newspapers figured out how to use it to their benefit and became stronger. There's going to be a lot more technology that's going to come on board. Things that we have never even thought of and dreamed of. But I wager you that newspapers will be able to grab that and use it to their own benefit. Charles Lindbergh invited was invited by his friend General Jimmy Doolittle to come and have dinner. And Charles Lindbergh wrote back to Jimmy Doolittle and he said, "You know, life seems to me to be too full of worthwhile things to spend all my time celebrating the past, knowing full well that at dinner Jimmy Doolittle wanted Charles Lindbergh to regale the audience on his famous flight. Lindbergh knew, as all no-limit achievers know, that you can't spend your time just dwelling in the past and your achievements of the past. You've got to jump over that threshold, that boundary of adventure and achievement, and seek new avenues of excitement. You've got to fulfill the undeveloped potential. So old achievements become yesterday's news. What you need to dream of, you need to have the vision for, is the new challenge, the new goal. And I think that really is what was magnificent about newspapers. Each time something new came along, they didn't talk about the past. They grabbed it, held hold of it, and moved forward in the future. New goals, new challenges, a new vision. The telegraph, radio, television, internet have not driven the newspapers out of business. In fact, the newspapers have survived, they've thrived, they've become stronger, and they've used it for their benefit. Of all the traditional media, newspapers are, I believe, the best possible position to use the internet. And the internet has given them two things that they've always wanted and never had. First, the ability to have space, really infinite space, to present the news and present advertising, and also the immediacy of delivery. Those two things were brought by the internet. Now, let's go back to the beginning of what I talked about. If we say that those are the two most important things that the newspapers wanted, and if we have then brought together into this one media package radio, internet, suburban newspapers, and now downtown newspaper, haven't we fulfilled that vision of what newspapers really wanted? So hopefully Portland is, as once again, the leader in providing this nation something that is new, innovative, has not been done before, bringing together what has been dreamed of by the newspapers, and Portland was the leader. There's a small village in France where an old sculptor, well known for his intricate artwork in sculpting beautiful statues that would be used in restorations of cathedrals, and a person that admired his work asked him how he could do such beautiful pieces of work. What led him to it? What was the vision in his mind? And he said, well, what I'll do is go out and pick a piece of marble, and I'll size it up about what I think would be appropriate. I'll bring it into my workshop, and then I'll just simply chisel away everything that doesn't look like the statue. Now, when you consider everything that we have heard about the challenges newspapers face, it sounds very complex and difficult. But if we can chisel away all the complexities that always exist with any situation, we find that under all that marble, we're left with a strong voice that puts the internet evolution, I think, in very good perspective. Few organizations are in better position to bring communities together and to build on their strengths than the newspapers. Each year, thousands of people around the country respond to the newspapers. Let me give you an example of what I mean. In Portland, Maine, the Press-Herald has undertaken it to engage thousands of the citizens in that area to come to grips with the painful reality of alcohol addiction. In Binghamton, New York, the Press and Sun Bulletin helped the community find its way for solutions because of economic downsizing in their community. In Baltimore, the Sun turned a spotlight on why third graders couldn't read and helped start a revolution in that area to bring literacy, absolute literacy, to that area. And then in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Observer helped some of the most crime-ridden parts of that community literally take back their neighborhoods. Now, these newspapers did more than just deliver the news. They got involved in their community. They brought the peoples together. And in so doing, they helped the readers face reality and understand the problems, grapple with their problems, and find solutions. There's a motto in the tiny Itawamba County Times newspaper. And that little newspaper's in Mississippi. And the newspaper says, "We're the only newspaper that cares anything about Itawamba County." Now, that's pretty single and simple-minded, but it really shows the purpose of everyone coming together and dealing with their problems of this 21st century. Presented to a line of notables, this gentleman was presenting the Queen of England to all of the different strangers that were coming through, and finally he turned to Her Majesty and he said, "You know, I just don't see how in the world, day after day, you can meet all these strange people. Isn't it difficult?" And Her Majesty says, "Well, you see, I so seldom have to introduce myself. They seem to know who I am." Well, truly a notable feature of the newspapers is that they have been around for so long that we know who they are. They know who we are. We just need to know who each other is. And if we can do that, then we have something really to work with. David P. Shipler lived in the Soviet Union between 77 and 79, and he was the bureau chief for the New York Times. And when he came back, he was visited by a friend of his from Lithuania. And the person was looking around. He said, "I just can't believe this. I was on a subway and I noticed there was a newspaper and it had just been left there on the bench. I go to the park and I see newspapers thrown in trash cans. I can't understand this. Do you realize that if we just had one of these papers in the Soviet Union, it was the Soviet Union at that time, one of these papers in the Soviet Union, it would be passed down from hand to hand, from person to person, to the point that it would disintegrate." That shows the valuable value of the history of newspaper. As Frenchman Alexis de Tocqueville, in his Observing America's Life in the 1800s, said, "You can't have real newspapers without democracy, and you can't have real democracy without newspapers." In the 1960s, America and Russia were scrambling to win the space race. Now, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, who we think of as NASA, was feverishly involved in a very, very important project. They had to discover an ink pen that would be able to work at zero gravity. They ended up spending $24 million to find the solution for this pen. Well, the Soviet cosmonauts had the same problem, but they used a pencil. Well, there are many avenues a person can source their news, but I maintain that newspapers will continue to be one of these most valuable sources. It'll be convenient, it'll be comprehensive. And when the adornments of a society are removed and the treasured values are revealed, undoubtedly one will be newspapers. Newspapers in whatever guise or format will continue to serve our democracy as they have since our beginning. Thank you very much.
Dr. Pamplin, thank you very much for that presentation. I'm delighted that we have a two-newspaper town. I'm also delighted that you brought up Clarence Darrow and told that story about how the last kiss he could remember was his wife's as he was talking to his friend. You know, Clarence Darrow used to come to the West Coast and he would visit C.E.S. Wood, one of the famous lawyers of Portland around the turn of the century. And Clarence Darrow always traveled with his mistress. And
You have a certain level of propriety with this club now.
and he introduced C.E.S. Wood to his mistress's sister, who then became his mistress. And C.E.S. Wood, when he left Portland and went to San Francisco, went with her. So Clarence Darrow probably didn't remember the last kiss of his wife. But my question is this. My question is, I look at the Portland Tribune and I don't see an awful lot of advertising there, and I'm concerned about the longevity of the paper, so I'm wondering if you're going to have enough advertising to break even, and I'm wondering what your own personal commitment to this paper is in the unfortunate event that you might meet the front of a Mack truck in a Portland intersection or something. How long are we going to see the Portland Tribune around?
Well, this is a far-ranging subject from mistresses to death. Is that from the womb to the tomb? Well, as I said in my speech, the most important ingredient for me was principle. I thought I live here, my friends live here, my family lives here, and wonderful, wonderful people live in the Portland area. We all agree with that. And it's kind of like visiting the Roman Forum. Now, you go to a cab driver and say, take me to the Roman Forum. And he says, which one? Because there are lots of them. And that was the purpose. There are lots of different places for people to engage in conversation. And that's what we're about, trying to provide an avenue for lots of different people to engage in conversation. So the principle, number one. Number two is how valuable is a principle? Well, for me, principle has always been the most cherished part of a man's life. I think Einstein said that the most important value of a person's life is his character. Character, I think you can say is synonymous with principle, and I ascribe to that 100%. So Portland Tribune will be here, and I've been assured by people on our staff that my principle will be validated because they say they're going to get all the advertising necessary to support this endeavor. And additionally, anyone out there that is a potential advertiser, please come forward. Okay, and about the Mack truck, I've always hated hood ornaments, and I don't intend to be one. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Dr. Pamplin. Irwin Mandel, City Club member. What is it that you think the Tribune can do better and or differently than the Oregonian or even Willamette Week?
Each one of those newspapers are wonderful newspapers. They're newspapers that have their market, their niche, and what they intend to say, the way they present themselves. We have our market, our niche, and the way we intend to say our news, balanced, fair, accurate, and so forth. We hope that we will be as good as they are in what we do. And what through the principle then is to provide everyone with different avenues of receiving information and being entertained by information.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Bill Parrish, City Club member. I love your paper. It's a great paper.
Why don't you
Everyone
move
should
up
pick up
closer?
a copy. I've read every one of them, including today's edition. My question is this, related to one of your indirect competitors. I'd like to state a fact and then get your response to it. The fact is, last year, the Microsoft Corporation, which is the #1 provider of electronic news, had sales of more than $20 billion and net income of almost $10 billion. And they didn't pay a penny of federal income tax. How do you compete with that?
Well, I'm not competing with Microsoft. I mean, they're not in the, they're in the software business, providing software, but we're in the...
MSN.
Pardon me?
MSN, the electronic delivery of news.
Oh, the electronic delivery of news? Well, newspapers, I think, are a totally different character than electronic delivery of news. I think that's important because electronic delivery of news, either through internet, radio, I think all of it is. Instant news is very important. However, I think you can't go and sit at a coffee table and take 2 television sets and turn them on at the same time, or 2 websites and turn them on at the same time and compare and contrast. You compare and contrast by spreading the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Tribune and Oregonian out on the same table, and you look at one story and how they present it, another story and how they presented it, and this gives you, and I think that's what, when I talk about balance, I think that's what it's all about. It's kind of like when you were in college and they asked you to write a theme and or a term paper, and you were to compare and contrast, and that's what life is about, is comparing and contrasting and an exchange of thoughts. Thank you.
Joella Whirlin, club member. When I really am delighted to have the Tribune, and sometimes, however, when I read it, I feel like Lucy sitting in that stern seat looking backwards, that there's a real sense of nostalgia that permeates the paper. And we had this wonderful presenter earlier who talked about a city club in the Ukraine. What are the boundaries of the Portland that you envision, and does that include international boundaries for news and information and for Portlanders?
Yes. We are local and regional news source. That's what we want to be known for, is our local and regional news source through the radio and through the newspaper. Now, the way we would handle a national story is only if it affected Portland. So let's say that we had someone that was from Portland that was getting a raw deal in a foreign country, and it really affected Portland because this person was vital to our citizenry. Then we would have the responsibility of covering that story. But if there's a story nationally or internationally that doesn't affect Portland directly, then that would be something that would be left to the Oregon USA Today. Yes, sir.
Dr. Pamela, Ken Ray, City Club member. You touched in your speech on the internet, newspapers, and radio. In the last year, I believe, at least 2 Portland television stations have been up for sale. Did you consider purchasing one or both of them? What were the factors and decisions that may have prevented that? And would you consider entering television as well at some point in the future?
Well, we have just been put in the cage with a giant gorilla, and we're still trying to find the door. Once we find the door, we may see some light. And when we do that, you never can tell what the, life is a great big adventure, and you don't know, what, might be on the horizon. But television is really a different type of market than the type of markets, we're involved in. The radio and newspapers are very compatible with one another because it's news talk, and, you'd have to be something like CNN or Fox, the news talk there, to really run the way we're operating our shop. So I don't see anything imminent with regard to television.
Andrew Linehan, City Club member. I apologize in advance for putting you on the spot a little bit, but would you please characterize for us what you saw as the newspaper media environment in Portland when you began your enterprise?
Okay, let me tell you in a story, if I may. There was a brave that was desperate to be chief. And the old chief was there, and he said, you know, I really think I can trick this old guy in front of the council and get to be chief. So he said, I'm going to test him. He took a small bird and put it in his hand, and he said, I'm going to ask the chief whether it's dead or alive. If he says it's dead, I'll open my hand and it'll fly away. If he says it's alive, I'll just crush the bird to death. And either way, the chief is not going to get the right answer. So he goes to the tribal council and he says, Chief, I'm holding a bird in my hand. Is it alive or dead? And the chief said, the answer is in your hand. And and so I think the answer is in all of our hands.
Thank you.
Nikki Lynch, City Club member. You mentioned in your talk that there were papers around the country who attacked problems and issues and helped the community solve them. And do you have any specific sort of problems or issues that you see in the Portland area that your media group can help solve?
You know, yes. Not specific, but generally. I think our job is to give readers the exposure of the problems and what different people believe are solutions. And as I said, let the readers make up their own mind. Our job is to stimulate. It's not to conclude. And I think that's what I was getting at with those stories is it was a stimulation of those newspapers that got the action going. And that's what we want to do. We want to stimulate. We want to cause people to really get with it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Lily Mandel, City Club member. Dr. Pamplin, how do you deal with the fact that owning so many media outlets gives you a great deal of power? You can become a media czar.
Is that
how do you deal with it?
Well, let's see. Let me put it this way. There was toward the end of World War II, the British a segment of the British Navy met a segment of the American Navy, and the American Navy signaled over to them, how is the second biggest Navy in the world? Of which the commander of the British Navy signaled back, fine, how's the second best? And so, what is better, quantity or quality? Yes.
I'm Ray Polani, a City Club member. Dr. Pamplin, I think you began your talk by talking about vision. And it seems to me that Portland, at this point, is seriously thinking about a vision, a different vision. There's been talk about joining the park blocks, about the East Bank Freeway, I-5, about covering 405. All of that without any mention of how, if we restrict the automobile, how we're going to move the number of people, the masses of people fast that we need to move in and out of the downtown and in and out of the metro area. It seems to me that the obvious thing is more max. But more max in the heart of the city must go underground, otherwise it knots up. What do you think?
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Well, I can't speak of that personally, but I can say that I really, oh yes, and I think that's the responsibility of newspapers, and I concur with you on that, and radio stations, everything. Now, that's one good thing and that's what's so valuable about the KPAM radio station is news talk. So, like Sheila Hamilton, you should call her and tell her, to get some experts on, and she does that. She gets them on both sides, and then they have at it. So you'll have one side that say, we need to put it underground. One side, no, you're all wrong, it needs to go above ground. Somebody else says it needs to fly in the sky like balloons. So, well, whatever. That's the value of KPAM, and that's why we have it there, is to do that. And that's what we're about, is to let sides come and express their ideas so that everyone has an opportunity to say what they think is the way to go. And then we pick the best solution. A little bit from here and a little bit from there. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Yes.
Kurt Webering, you mentioned Sheila Hamilton. I'm with the Northwest Early Childhood Institute, and we've had experts in early childhood interviewed by Sheila Hamilton. It's been, I think, useful and lively radio, and it's certainly been useful for us to get information about our topic area of interest. But you said that one of your criteria was non-sensational news. So I'm wondering how you can hold to that, both in your newspaper and in your radio, if the ratings slip or you're not able to get the advertising.
Yeah, what I meant by non-sensational is we're not the Inquirer. We're, and also I looked at non-sensational as mischaracterization of news. We want, when you say something, your opinion, we want to give what your opinion is. We don't want to camouflage it and represent it as your opinion, but it's really ours. So we want to be honest, and I think non-sensational to me is two things. Number one is way out abusive, and the other is that everybody's opinions and the way it's presented is presented fairly and accurately, not mere characterization, and not leaving out information purposely. So what you do say is right, but you've left something out that at the end makes what you said in the front really wrong. Yes.
Gil Johnson, City Club member. I got my first job out of college was working on a newspaper, and I'm not applying for a job though. Anyway, one of the things I learned is get your paper out on time. The first thing that happened to me my first day is I'm writing a really great story, not quite done with it. The editor pulls it out of the typewriter. We had typewriters back then, and I said, "What's going on?" And he says, "Well, you can write the best story in the world, but it isn't worth a damn if nobody reads it." I'm glad to see the Tribune is finally getting over the east side. I didn't find it this morning, but anyway, I'm glad to see it's still there.
You see this guy right there, the one sitting down with the napkin over his head?
Yeah.
He's the one you want to go talk to.
Okay.
That's Don Olson. He takes care of all the distribution.
Yeah. I'm also glad to hear that you're talking about stimulating the community in a lot of ways. A lot of people in this room do this on a regular basis in terms of not just meeting here, but putting out research reports that have taken several months to develop, going to standing committee meetings on things like arts and education and growth management. And I find that's rather underreported in the press right now, everywhere. Underreported, especially when we do like a big study on a ballot measure, things like that. Occasionally the Oregonian has given it some mention in certain things, but we got more. So I'd like to see if I can pin you down and see, will you start putting some attention to what the City Club does for these things?
Yeah. That's let me say that I'm the owner. I'm not the editor or publisher. You got to talk to these guys over here. In fact, it's probably a sounding board coming. I think they heard you. Yeah. Yes, please.
Jay Bloom, City Club member. Hi, Dr. Pamplin.
Hi.
I'm an avid reader, and one of my concerns, however, is that newspaper reading nationally continues to decline. Do you have any thoughts on how we might increase newspaper reading in
Two
general?
things. Boy, I got you on that one. Two things. Number one is that dailies are either stagnant or have declined. Suburban newspapers have gone up. That's one of the reasons why I attracted to all the suburban newspapers. Okay. They're growing. Now, why is that? And I alluded to it in my speech, is that people live in suburban areas. We've gotten so big that people want to identify with something. They can't identify with 10,000 people walking down the street. They've got to, have you ever, this is way off the subject, but, you go to the airport in Atlanta, and it's early in the morning, and you're tired. And you look at all of this mass of humanity walking around, and it really dawns on you, you know, they have a life too. You know, you walking around thinking you're the only person in the world, but they all have a life too. So, you know, it's, yeah, I agree, you know, that we you know, we're all involved in this. Yeah. Yes.
This
Yes.
will be our last question.
Last question, okay.
Dr. Pamplin, Don Wagner,
Yes.
City Club member. And I do appreciate the efforts you're doing, and I appreciate also reading the paper. I am wondering, at the moment there's no charge. Is it possible that you can continue that on out in the future?
Well, news today is free, basically. You can turn on your television set, you don't have to pay for it, unless you're hooked on cable. You can listen to the radio, that's free. So you can get your news, you can access your news free website. So it doesn't make any sense to charge for news. I mean, I think 5, 10, 20 years from now, or not that long, but I think in not too distant future, you're going to find that all news is probably going to be free. And the advertisers are the ones that will be paying to support the newspapers. Now, newspapers probably won't make as much money as they have in the past. But you know, if you go back and you think about it, newspapers really have never been set up to make money. They've been set up to reflect the history of the community and to express the ideas of the community. So that's why this was set up that way, is for principle. And yes, we do believe that, you know, as we gradually grow. In fact, we started out with 150,000 copies, and I just found out from Don yesterday that we have now up to 155,000 copies because so many people have called in from the suburban areas wanting, and we just charge in the areas outside of our distribution $52 to start off with. It covers our mailing cost, and eventually, you know, for those people outside of our delivery area, we'll have to charge, you know, something to, you know, provide them the news. But we're not charging for the newspaper. So if you don't want to pay to have it delivered to your home outside of Portland, then you need to come downtown Portland and get it out of a rack. But, and it's grown so much, we started out with 400 racks, and it exploded, so we had to order another 500, and plus additional wire racks. So we were up over 1,000 racks just in this Portland area for distribution. And because people keep calling in and say, well, we need it here, we need it there, and we're delighted to provide it. And we believe that within our confined area of Portland, that we will receive enough advertising revenue and classified ad revenue in order to support the paper. And once again, folks, I'm not in this to make money. I'm not in it to lose money. And if you don't make money, you don't lose money, that means you break even. So that's what and to me, the single most significant issue is principle, and I don't intend to be a Mack truck hood ornament. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Pamplin, for kicking Sidonius off the block in Portland at any rate. Thank you for a marvelous speech. We're adjourned.